Good Friday morning, and welcome to this week's episode of Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don Stevens,
And I'm Jonathan. Good to be here.
and Jonathan and I are laughing because we just filmed the entire podcast, except I never hit record because I'm old and I don't understand technology. Uh,
Okay.
anyway, so we're going to try to duplicate what we just
Well,
said
see,
half an hour ago.
so you know this. You've given two sermons on one Sunday. The second sermon's always better, so this one's going to be better.
Exactly. Exactly. If I want to start out just by acknowledging the fact that we were both grieving a little bit today because someone who's been influential in our learning process and our ministries over the years passed away yesterday. That's Reverend Dr. Tony Campolo. So our condolences go out to the family and friends of Dr. Campolo. Yeah, he's a big name in evangelical and Christian circles, and
Yeah.
was really a local guy for us, a Philly native. So
He co-founded the Red Letter Christian movement. Most people probably
right,
don't do that stuff.
and he was involved. I went to Eastern University, or I didn't go to Eastern University, but I went to Eastern Seminary, and so he was involved in Evangelicals for Social Action, which was started by Ron Sider at Eastern Seminary. So um, yeah. No, I actually had the privilege of having him preach at one of my churches at one time, which was just a kind of a highlight in my ministry career. So,
Yeah, he was a well-known, he was a
yeah,
well-beloved preacher. Like people,
yeah,
I heard him a couple times, and yeah, and again, we talked about this in the last episode, but it leads in a weird way. It leads into this movie because one thing Reverend Dr. Campolo, really emphasized was the idea that Christians were called to do what Jesus did, which was engage with and love and serve the marginalized and work to bring them back into community. And in a lot of ways, this movie is about a man who, both on his own, pulls away from society, but also in the interactions you see with other people in the movie, people have also marginalized him as well. So,
yeah, yeah. And so, for those who may have missed last week or weren't paying attention or whatever, the movie that we watched this week is the 2022 film called The Whale. Starring Brendan Fraser, Sadie Sink, Ty Simpkins, Hong Chow, Samantha Morton, among others. It is directed by Darren Aronofsky, written by Samuel Hunter, based on the play of the same name that he also wrote. Um, Basic synopsis: it is the story of a morbidly obese man who is a college professor, teaches his classes with the camera turned off on online, who is knows that he is dying and is trying to rebuild his relationship with his teenage daughter after he left her mother when she was 8 for a relationship with a student.
yeah,
I think I got all of that right.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And to really have a conversation about this movie, we're going to have to spoil some things. So if you haven't watched it and want to watch it, pause now, watch the movie, come back.
good idea, because we really do have to. There's a lot in this film that, in order to really talk about the themes, you've got to kind of talk about some of the things that happen in the film that would be spoilers. So,
Yeah,
thank you for bringing that up, Jonathan. It's a good idea.
yeah.
So, where do we want to start again?
Well, I mean, I think it's fair, especially since most people in our audience are going to come to this movie and they are probably entrenched in a religious community. This movie is very harsh in its critique of organized religion.
Without a doubt.
And and I think as a Christian, it's important for us to see well done movies like this because the critiques can be fair, even if we think they're heavy-handed, or even if we think honestly they don't fit all religious communities, which they obviously don't. It's worth setting with someone's struggle with organized religion because real people have had real experiences where they have felt they have been pushed out of the church by people who have not treated them with love and grace. And if you're really going to engage with them and help hopefully find them back to a relationship with God and Christ through the church, you're going to have to be able to have these difficult conversations. So,
Right. Yeah, that I think the word, and I know you know the word, but I think the word is marginalized, right? People have
yeah,
been marginalized by the church,
yeah,
and disenfranchised by the church, and that is a huge theme in this film, for sure.
yeah.
Uh, but it's interesting to see that maybe one of the more redeeming characters in the film represents the church,
Yes,
and that he is doing what he can to try to help Charlie, the main character.
yeah,
And then we find out that he isn't so perfect either, that he's kind of broken too.
yeah.
So that's there's so much going on in this film. Let's say this up front, right? This is not a happy movie.
No, it's depressing.
This is not, it's not a popcorn movie. This is,
Yeah, I would say it's in a similar kind of category as Schindler's List, where I would tell anybody you need to see Schindler's List, but it's not one of those
yeah.
movies where you're going to be like, "Oh, Schindler's List is on. Let's sit down and
Yeah,
watch 30
yeah,
minutes."
no, no. In fact, I saw a video review of this movie, and it was two Christian guys,
Yeah,
and they said that there's kind of two types of movies in the world. There's the movies you like to watch,
yeah,
and the movies that you should watch, and the movies that make you think. He
yeah,
said this is a movie that makes you think,
yeah,
particularly with the depths and the layers and the themes that are in this film. It's going to make you think a lot. Um, I think there's a fair bit of guilt
mhm,
in here. There's a fair bit of, theme of forgiveness.
yeah.
There's, I think, some leaning towards reconciliation, although that's,
Well,
never really comes to fruition. But
what's interesting is a movie that's very critical, and in some regards, I really want to say if give some fair critiques of some how some churches function, not all churches, but how some churches function.
Mhm.
What's interesting is the movie ends in a very spiritual, almost afterlife way. I don't want to give it away, but it's very
Yeah.
kind of like heaven, and God kind of. There's a real kind of infusion. I don't know if the director or writer saw it this way or would critique it this way, but I would argue the last 2 minutes is very spiritual and really
Hmm.
almost hopes for, if not kind of assumes there's an afterlife. Wouldn't you agree with that? Like there's
I
almost
think I would, yeah. And what's interesting when you talk about how the movie ends,
yeah,
we get from the very beginning that Charlie's relationship, the relationship that he left his wife for, was for another man, was
yeah,
for a student.
yeah,
Um, but and he categorizes that relationship with Alan, who we never see in the film. Alan has committed suicide,
yeah.
which
Years
we
before.
implied at least is why Charlie is so big, because he's kind of eaten his grief,
Yes.
literally with food.
Yeah.
But that he implies that relationship with Alan were the best years of his life, and yet when he has that spiritual experience at the end, he doesn't see his relationship with Alan. He sees his relationship with his daughter, which he's been trying to rebuild
Yeah.
over the course of this film,
Yeah.
which I think says a lot about, it's almost redeeming, right?
Mhm.
Of and it kind of points to, does Charlie regret ultimately his loss of his relationship with his daughter? Does he regret leaving his wife?
Yeah.
Like, you don't really. it may be implied there, but
To me, I read it as that's what he sacrificed and that's what he missed. You know, and again, we talked about this in the previous taping, non-taping. Um,
it's we
but
no, we didn't. There's no history of that.
that's true. No, it doesn't exist. But what's interesting is Charlie is very critical of organized religion, very critical of the idea that the missionary kind of brings in. Um, and he pushes back on the missionaries kind of, well, kind of the way you existed with Alan was wrong, and why Alan killed himself was because he was in love with you and all this kind of stuff. And what's interesting for me is he's very critiquing, I would argue very fairly, this idea, this binary idea of there's no gray in the world, right? It's either black or it's white. And he pushes back against this missionary's idea of Alan and his love for Alan. And yet, what's interesting is he's chosen to exist in a life where he acts like those binaries are real. He made a choice that he could not be in a relationship with his daughter because he was in a relationship with Alan. And so he's buying into kind of what he's pushing back against about the mistakes of the church, right? He's saying that this church told Alan, who Alan was the son of the pastor of this church.
Yeah.
He's pushing back against this missionary and saying Alan could have loved me and he didn't have to kill himself because he loved me. And yet he chose to believe he couldn't be in his daughter's life because he was in this relationship with Alan. So it's a weird thing because he kind of buys into the very thing he wants to critique, which is interesting. What which makes me think that the writer of the screenplay at least is trying to argue we oftentimes accept the premises people give us, even at the same moment we're critiquing the premises that we inherit from them. That we don't think outside the box.
That, so sometimes you are what you claim someone else is.
Yeah.
We see that. I think, well, look, you're the
Yeah.
political science major. I think we see that a lot of times in politics,
Oh, absolutely.
accuse the other side of what you're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't trust them. They always lie. It's like maybe maybe that's a self-critique there, right? Um, yeah, one of the things I did want to mention that we didn't get to last time, but to me, one of the most effective critiques of this movie in terms of organized religion was when Liz, who has helped Charlie, has kind of functions as his nurse slash caretaker.
Hmm.
She is Alan's sister. So
Right.
she has left the church years before. She clearly was trying to get Alan to leave the church, or at least this church. And she's very critical of religion. And one of the things she says, which I think is probably the best critique of the church when the church goes wrong, is this missionary is kind of arguing about this vision of the kingdom of God and this vision of what life's supposed to be about. And then she goes, essentially, she says, that vision works for a lot of people, but the church never knows what to do with the people that vision doesn't work for.
Right.
And I would argue that's one of the best critiques I've heard of the church. And I think it's one of our biggest failings is when when you come into a church and you kind of fit all their norms about what a person's supposed to be and how they're supposed to live, we usually treat you really well and uplift you really well and help take care of you really well. But when you don't fit into our understanding of how life is supposed to go and how people are supposed to be, we have a hard time making room for you. We have a tendency of one way or the other kind of pushing you out so that we can get back to our vision of what the kingdom of God's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that one. That's challenging. There's a line in the film. and this is towards the end because a lot of the film we never see Charlie's ex-wife.
Yeah.
Okay, his daughter's mother.
Yeah.
And then she shows up, and we find out that no, she's a mess too.
Yeah.
Everybody in this film is a mess,
Yeah.
emotionally at least. And Charlie kind of breaks down after it almost looked like they were heading towards reconciliation, and then it flares up again, and he breaks down and he says to her, I just want to know I did one thing right in
Yeah.
my life. It was a powerful statement because all he's trying to do at that point, and this is after he said that the best years of his life were the time he spent with Alan.
Yeah.
um all he's trying to do at this point is provide for his daughter,
Yeah.
right? He's neglecting his own health. And now I said this before, and you push back on me because you're right, but there's almost a sense that
Yeah.
Charlie's a little bit of a Christ figure in that he's self-sacrificial.
Yeah.
Your words were,
Well, it's a twisted
it's a
understanding of it.
absolutely is a twisted understanding.
What I would
But
argue,
well,
yeah,
the point is that he's neglecting his own health, and he's not taking care of himself in order to save this money that he's put away
yeah,
so that she can have it and take care of herself.
yeah,
And you're right when you say that's twisted,
yeah,
because there's scripture here
yeah.
that tells us, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself.
So it means
Well,
you
if
have to,
you don't love yourself enough
yeah,
to take care of yourself,
yeah,
how can you possibly love your neighbor? How can you possibly take care of your neighbor? You can't.
yeah.
You've got to be able. You've got to be functional.
Well, to me, it's actually a way you look at Charlie is that he suffers from what a lot of pastors suffer from, which is he has a Messiah complex.
Messiah complex. Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, that's the twisted version of believing that you have to save other people, and how you're going to save them is
Right.
by allowing yourself to be fully destroyed.
Right. And
And
thank God for our own conference, at least,
yeah,
putting a stress on self-care for
yeah,
clergy in the last years. That
yeah,
we take care of ourselves. Take your vacation. Are you listening, clergy? Take your vacation. You
yes.
know.
And again, that's again again, it's fascinating. The more I think about this film, Charlie inhabits the very critiques of religion he has, and he accepts the very critiques of religion he has as the only way to be. So, like most people, if you're critiquing religion, especially Christian religion, you would say one of the bad things about Christian religion is that we create the Messiah complex, right? That we create this
Mhm.
idea that we're all called to suffer to the point of self annihilation for other people. And yet, what is he doing in the film? He is choosing to annihilate himself so that in his mind he will benefit his daughter. But you could easily argue that she would be better off if he were taking care of himself and actively in his her life.
Involved in their life. Right.
Yeah,
Right. Well, gosh, I've I mentioned this before. I've lost a lot of weight in the last year.
yeah,
And one of the big reasons that I, like I don't pat myself on the back, but honestly, one of the big reasons that I'm proud of myself for that is that I'm going to be around longer for my kids.
yeah, of course.
Because my kids are my boys are 14 and 12.
Yeah,
So, and I'm 60. So, I want to be around a little while yet.
absolutely.
So yeah, exactly. Um, what else have we got in this film? Because there's plenty here.
There's a lot here. I I think again it's fair as Christians to recognize that Charlie are the very people that we are called to be with. And oftentimes we think our job is to fix Charlie.
which is
And
represented by the evangelist, the young
yeah,
man that
especially
comes
at
in.
the end, especially at the end.
Right.
Um,
Because
and
he feels like his calling was to save Charlie. Charlie's going to die, but I have to save his soul, you
yeah,
know?
so I had a professor in seminary that in a pastoral care class that the very first week, very first class, he read to us the story of Joe of oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Job and his three friends. He, he read that story and he said, I want you to know as pastors that the 7 weeks his friends sat in silence is the best example of pastoral care you'll ever find in the Bible. And and so I we mentioned this the last time we pretended to record, right? Um, that
Never live that down.
the Jewish, I will let it go at the end of this. I really, it doesn't matter. I've done the same stupid thing, so it's not the big deal. But setting Shiva, which is a Jewish tradition, is that when someone loses someone in their life dies, you come with food and you come to their house at certain times for 7 days in a row, and you simply set and you mourn with them. And if they want to talk, you talk, and if they want to cry, you cry, and if they want to sit in silence, you just sit in silence. And that's born out of Job because Job, when
Right.
if you don't know the character of Job, Job loses everything. His whole life falls apart, and three of his friends come to visit him, and for 7 days, all they do is sit in silence and mourn and cry with him. And God only starts critiquing them when they start talking to Job and start making him feel bad about his life and try to explain away his suffering and try to make him take responsibility for it.
It's interesting you bring that up because I've had that Job experience, and it was before I was even clergy.
Yeah,
I knew this was where I was going. I was in school,
yeah,
and a friend called me because his friend, who I knew through a mutual fantasy football league,
yeah,
the wife had committed suicide.
yeah,
And he called me and said, "Hey, my buddy, I'm from the football league. Here's the story." And he's asking for you because they don't have a church family. I was like, "Me?
yeah,
What do I do?" I mean, I'll go there, but I don't know what to do. I called my pastor at the
yeah,
time, and I said to her, "What do I do?" She said, "Nothing. Go there, sit, listen." I mean, she told me Shiva, even though she didn't use that word.
yeah,
That's She said, "Go there, sit, listen. If they want to talk with them, help them sort things out." And it was probably one of the most effective things I've done in ministry, and I wasn't really even clergy at that point. So
well, and in this movie, we get a reverse of that because the missionary, or actually, we don't get a reverse of it. We get Job played out, really. We get the
right,
missionary coming to Charlie because he believes somehow God's calling him into this relationship and somehow God's going to use him. And so at the very beginning, all he does is tries to serve Charlie, try to help Charlie, and try to talk to Charlie, kind of engage him. It falls apart when he tries to explain away Charlie and Alan's suffering. When he tries to
right,
basically go, I'm going to fix you. That's when the relationship falls apart. When he simply comes to, hey, Charlie, how can I help you? Hey, Charlie, you know what? I'm sure God loves you and I'm called to be here. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to sit here with you. I'm going to listen to you.
right.
When he does that, it's working. When he attempts to fix Charlie, that's when everything falls apart.
Yeah, maybe the most effective thing that the evangelist does in the whole film is pick up a key off the floor that Charlie dropped.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm going back to the story that I just told. Maybe I felt at least the most effective thing I did that day was go with my friend to our mutual friend's house and
yeah,
clean up from the paramedics before they went home.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, That's
Absolutely.
the thing. You just be, yeah. I get it. That's tough. It's tough
Well,
stuff, man.
I do think, yeah, absolutely, those experiences. And I think what Christians often do wrong when we try to engage with people who have been marginalized, whether because of injustice or even because of choices they've made, we attempt to hurry to the fix. We attempt to get them to where we are or get them to see the situation like we see them. You find this when people go into someone who has just lost somebody and they'll say something like, well, God needed another angel, you know, or, you
I
know,
hate that line.
they attempt to basically what it is they are uncomfortable with the other person suffering, so they try to shortchange the person's suffering so that they can stop feeling uncomfortable. It has nothing actually to do with the person
The
that's
person.
that's suffering, right? But really, what we are called to do if we follow Jesus is his first thing he did when he went out to the margins as a healer was to build a relationship, was to find the person where they were and to encounter them and to love them and to show them that there was a God that loved them too, right? And that there was a community that could love them, that there was somebody that could love them. And that's where good pastoral care, and again, it's important for people to realize that pastors are not the only people that are called to do pastoral care.
True. Very true.
Um, Good pastoral care starts when you simply want to build a better relationship with the person that's in front of you. You want to let them know that you
It
love them.
starts. It starts here, not here.
It starts with
Starts.
listening. It
Yeah.
starts with not explaining. It starts with understanding that it's okay if you're uncomfortable, be in that moment with them, you know? And that's one thing that you can take from movies like this is it reminds you that oftentimes the damage we do as Christians comes when we try to solve the problem instead of simply saying, I'm called to love you, I'm called to serve you, I'm called to build a relationship with you, and that's what I'm going to do.
Walk alongside you, not lead you,
Yeah.
not drag you to my point of view,
Yeah.
but to walk alongside
And trust the idea that if you do that, if you love them, if you serve them, if you care for them, that God can do amazing things through that gift of that gift you're giving them.
hey, I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that. That's what else we want to there's again, I think
Oh yeah. I
we could
mean,
drag this film out a lot.
I
There's
think there's just a lot here about how we tend as human beings to not deal with pain. So you kind of have visual representations of the different ways we all try to deal with pain, right? So you have him,
cleans is
yeah. So you have him eating. You have him,
yeah. And I
taking,
mean,
yeah,
let's be real honest here. Those scenes where Charlie is very obviously eating his pain,
yeah,
they're filmed almost like they're horror film scenes,
yeah,
like they
yeah,
really are. Um, but then go ahead. There's Charlie.
yeah. There's also the reality where you realize that the key he's trying to get to open the door is he has shut off his master bedroom where clearly Alan and he were living before Alan committed suicide. So that's a physical representation, a visible representation, right, of Alan not dealing with that loss and not dealing with, like, he won't even talk about Alan with his daughter. He won't even talk about Alan with the missionary. He barely will even talk with Alan's sister about Alan.
Right.
He won't deal with the deep loss and pain of the person he loved and the fact that that person chose to commit suicide.
Right. But I mean, even other characters, in the
Yeah,
ways that they deal with, like I think Liz is the
yeah,
sister,
yeah,
and her way of dealing with that loss and that pain is anger, and
yeah.
she lashes out about it.
Well,
To the missionary kid,
yeah,
to um, wow, Charlie. I mean, she to the
yeah,
daughter, she just
yeah,
lashes out.
yeah,
I think the daughters, the way that she deals with it is she's very rebellious.
yeah.
She acts out.
Well, and she's
I
also
see that
put.
sometimes in my son, who's
Yeah.
sitting right there.
Well, yeah. Sorry, kiddo. But
He's got headphones on; he can't hear me.
also, she's pushing away, right? She's
Yeah,
pushing away the possibility of, you know, for the critiques you could give of the fact that Charlie left his family and disconnected from his daughter, you can give legitimate critiques to him, right? Absolutely. But he is trying to reach out. He's trying to see if he can foster some type of relationship in the time he has left. And she's batting those things back.
yeah, she's pushing away,
Yeah.
pushing it back. Yeah,
Even though it's clearly, because we get a scene at the last scene of the movie, it's clearly what she wants. She wants that relationship with him. She wants her daddy
yeah,
back, right?
yeah,
And yet when he's offering that opportunity, her instinct is to push it away.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a microcosm of all the things human beings do to run away instead of dealing with their pain.
I think I mean, there's other aspects. We didn't even touch on any of the discussions that he had with his class and some
Oh,
of the stuff that could come out of that. There's plenty
yeah.
more there. The
Oh yeah.
fact that he teaches his class with the camera turned off,
The fact that
because of
he asked them to be honest and open with him
right,
and with
and
their
but he's
writing, but
not
for most of the movie he won't let them see who he is.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much more to talk about, but we are getting short on time,
Yes.
so we need to move on to talk. Well, final note on this, okay?
Yeah.
There are some things in this. It's an R-rated film for a reason.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
some things in here that are objectionable, sexual situations,
Yeah.
language, etc. It's not violent or gory or anything like that. Um, it's a film that's going to make you think. It
Yeah.
has some themes that are very adult, so take that
Yeah.
into consideration. I wouldn't let my kids watch it.
And it's
Um,
very sad. So, make sure you have something happy to do afterwards.
that's right. Go to the carnival or something.
Yes. Pop it Dumb and Dumber, something.
um, but since we have already discussed in a prior recording
Yeah.
what we're going to watch this, um,
Yeah.
just a quick note. Today, as we record, is my wife's birthday. I wanted to take her to see a film that she wants to see this week. So next week we will review Wicked.
Yep.
And be aware, I just found out this week that the film that's come out this week
Yeah.
is only part one.
Oh, you didn't know that.
I didn't know that, no, but that's okay. She wants to see it. I'll take her to see both, you know.
Yeah.
But
It's fascinating that a show that's about just a little bit over 2 hours, they're making into a two-part movie.
to
But
a two-part go figure. Well, I mean, look, they turned The Hobbit into
into
three
three
films.
three
So
books.
and folks, we are absolutely, I think, going to watch Bonhoeffer next week.
Yeah.
So that after Wicked this week. So stay tuned for that because I'm really excited. I've been doing a little reading and research on Bonhoeffer, and I'm excited about seeing that film. So
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
other than that, friends, keep on finding God in the dark. We will see you all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast. If you're enjoying these discussions, please consider hitting the like button down below or subscribing to follow along. We put out weekly episodes on Friday mornings, and we are so glad that you're finding this discussion of theology and film entertaining enough to follow along with us. Take care and God bless, friends.